On September the 23rd in the year 2000, an African-American teenage superhero zapped onto our screens and changed the game. Virgil Hawkins, better known as Static, wasn't just another caped crusader. He was a kid dealing with homework, crushes, and the occasional supervillain, all while being a hero in a city that could feel all too real. Not to make anyone feel old, but yes, that means Static Shock is now 25 years old. Excuse me while I turn to dust. The reason why Static Shock still endures when so many other early 2000s shows have faded into obscurity is because it was groundbreaking in several ways. Virgil Hawkins was one of the first African-American teenage superheroes to headline his own mainstream cartoon. He wasn't a sidekick or a guest star, but the hero at the centre of the story, and it wasn't just him. The show features a diverse cast of friends, family, and foes, reflecting communities in a way that many earlier cartoons just simply didn't. Static Shock was an adaptation of the comic book created by Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Cohen. Static was a headline character of Milestone Comics' line of African-American-centric comics. While they were published by DC, the Milestone team were mostly separate and did their own thing. These comics could be quite edgy too, tackling gang violence, systemic racism, and the pressure kids face in everyday life. The cartoon, while vibrant and colourful, didn't shy away from these issues though. It would have been very easy to just replicate the dark grittiness of Batman the Animated Series and tell stories like this, but they opted to go in the opposite direction. While it was intended for a 7+ audience, the sad fact is that there are young children who get exposed to these issues in their everyday lives. But the creative team skillfully navigated the restrictions imposed on them by network censors to deliver some hard-hitting scripts. Now, this probably shouldn't be surprising given that Dwayne McDuffie was the story editor and Dennis Cohen was a producer and a director on the series, and actually getting the original creators on board for an adaptation is relatively rare. It's not like Bob Kane and Bill Finger had major creative roles in Batman media outside of the comics. I mean, it's kinda debatable how big Bob Kane's role was in the creation of Batman anyway, but that's an entirely separate matter. While other superhero cartoons leaned into city-smashing spectacle or world-ending threats, Static Shock paired superpowers with real-life consequences. It dealt with bullying, school shooters, drug addiction, casual racism, and more. It was entertaining, but it also caused viewers to think about what they'd just seen and how it could apply to their real lives. These episodes had a clear message and sometimes ended with a public service-style message for the audience, but it rarely felt laboured. One of the things I particularly like was the analogy of the Bang Babies, the children that were exposed to a mutagenic gas that gave them superpowers. They were normal kids one day, and then the next they were radically changed. Two rival groups of kids had arranged to meet and fight at the docks, and when the police turned up they fired a tear gas canister at them. The detonation caused the mutagenic quantum vapor to envelop the kids. These children became a generation shaped by circumstances that they didn't choose, navigating a world that was often hostile or, at best, unprepared for them. And yeah, it is kind of a little bit like Marvel's X-Men. Some Bang Babies embraced their powers responsibly, like Virgil, while others fell into crime, resentment, or rebellion like Ebon or Hotstreak. The tension between older authority figures like parents, law enforcement, or institutions, and the young Bang Babies mirrors the push and pull of generational expectations. They are expected to respect tradition, but also survive in a world that doesn't always make space for them. Beyond the generational analogy, Bang Babies serve as a metaphor for radicalized experiences. The show explicitly links the Bang Baby phenomenon to systemic injustice. Many of the affected kids come from marginalized communities, and society reacts to them with fear, suspicion, and outright hostility. The media and law enforcement treat them differently based on their appearance too. Static passes for a normal person, so generally he is treated with respect, while other Bang Babies with more unconventional appearances are hated regardless of what they do. The Bang Babies' powers make them stand out, but that visibility draws scrutiny and judgment, echoing real-world racial dynamics. Some kids are feared or criminalized simply because of who they are and what society assumes about them, and the same thing happens with the Bang Babies. Most are just worried kids, unsure how to navigate life after their powers emerged. Quite a few stories involve Bang Babies horrified by what they had become, running away and living on the streets because of how they were treated. And I think that these analogies are what helps Static Shock stand out. It's more than a superhero story. It explores systemic oppression and intergenerational struggle in a kid-accessible way. It shows that powers, privilege, and opportunity are never distributed evenly, and these inequalities can define how someone grows, rebels, or even rises above. And it's a great storytelling device, a superhero show that teaches us about responsibility, identity, and society, while never losing sight of fun and relatable characters. This narrative device allowed the creative team to be pretty inventive when it came to the characters too. Some writers spoke about network restrictions. For example, Static's recurring villains didn't test well in focus groups, so the team had to invent new challenges, like a sunspot causing Static's powers to surge. Though frustrating for them at the time, these limitations actually forced more varied storytelling. And while villains were used, they often had a personal connection to the hero. Classmates, friends gone wrong, or adults corrupted by circumstance. They very rarely had monsters of the week. Instead, they were people who didn't ask to be given the powers they had received. Sure, some of them relished their new power and misused them, but many were just people trying to get by. Even today, the storytelling holds up. You don't just watch Static defeat a bad guy, you watch him navigate a complicated world, trying to be the best person he can be, and hopefully inspire others to do better. Now, one of the things that doesn't get mentioned enough is that initially, Static Shock was not intended to be part of the DC animated universe, much in the same way that the Milestone universe was separate from the mainline DC universe. This explains its more distinctive and bright art style. However, the Season 2 premiere, The Big Leagues, featured a crossover with Batman, Robin and the Joker in an attempt to boost ratings. And it was so successful that every season going forward had at least one crossover with the DCAU characters. In the episode Future Shock, Static went on a time-travelling adventure to the time of Batman Beyond, where he learned that he would grow up to be Earth's greatest hero. In a world where Superman exists and is still active, that's quite a feat. And yet it didn't feel like too much of a stretch. I think that part of the reason why I feel that way is that, at his core, Virgil is very similar to Spider-Man. He started out as a geeky kid that got superpowers after an accident and decided to put on a costume and do good for his community. Spider-Man is arguably the world's most popular superhero, sorry Batman, so it's easy to see how Static could grow up to be a hero of a similar stature. But to get back to the crossovers, it's worth remembering that participation went both ways, with an older Static appearing in the Justice League two-parter Once and Future Thing, as a prominent member of the Justice League Unlimited. Green Lantern's reaction to the very capable elder Static is amusing. He can hardly believe they're the same person, having only known Virgil as a goofy kid. And it's made funnier by the fact that both Static and Green Lantern were voiced by Phil Lamar. Yes, it's all very meta. I don't have the inside track on how these crossovers came to be, but the end result was that the show was able to continue for 4 seasons, which was no mean feat. While I think that the association with the beloved DC animated universe gave it more exposure, the quality of the show encouraged people to stick around. And there wasn't a massive clash in tones either. Static neatly integrated without very much friction. I think that ultimately Static Shock's biggest contribution to pop culture was that it had a hero that resonated with the African American audience, but he was also a window into African American culture for people from other backgrounds like me. The episode Static in Africa, for instance, touched upon a very complex issue about African American identities and how their culture had been ripped away from them by slavery hundreds of years ago. There's a really powerful scene where Static says that being in Africa feels like a weight has been lifted. He's not a black kid, always having to think about how he might be perceived by other people. He's just a kid. That scene stuck with me because I hadn't really considered it before, especially growing up in a coastal UK town with only 3 or 4 children of colour at my school. But it caused me to pause and think about their experience, and that's why even 25 years later, Static Shock still stands out. Now, that's not to say that it was a perfect show. There were some very awkward celebrity cameos that date it, need I say more than Hoop Squad, but overall, it's a great show. For some viewers, Virgil was a hero who looked like them in a way rarely seen on TV. For others, like me, he offered a window into experiences I hadn't considered. And I think that overall it had a very positive and empathetic message. Ultimately, the show demonstrated that superhero stories can challenge, inspire, and stay with us long after the credits roll. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my channel members. Everyone who was a member at the time of this video's creation is listed on the screen right now. If you want to see your name amongst all these wonderful people, join the channel now. Next time. I'll be back on Friday to talk about an often overlooked hero that stood up against his father, the ultimate evil in the universe, Darkseid. Yes, we're going to be talking about Orion. And then on Monday, I want to talk about a very touching episode of Batman the Animated Series that doesn't feature any costume supervillains. Instead, it's a very human story about poverty, dehumanization, and greed. I'm going to talk about Appointment in Crime Alley. Hope to see you then.